very important distinction.
There's a very important distinction. Now you're a vet, you darn well better know the difference between a 3-10 and a 3-10 slot. You'll be ridiculed.
It's me and my son.
Doesn't Donna want to be very creative?
There we go.
Don't minimize it.
No, don't minimize.
Don't minimize.
No,
That's when it goes down.
Well, yeah.
All right, thank
We
you.
didn't have taken these meetings over.
Oh, okay.
So we're
Oh,
here
I didn't
to,
know that.
yeah,
Oh.
I think that's the plan, as she,
good for you.
yeah. So we're here as visitors.
Oh, thank
In
you. I
future.
should let you introduce yourself. So I didn't realize it. Okay. So with that, are we good? Are we recording?
Yes.
Very good. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kelly, for any city
We have your
updates.
announcements.
Things are done happening.
Okay, so we are also in the middle of our budget process, working on preparing our 2-year budget so that we can bring that to council in the latter part of May for discussion and approval, hopefully in June. We are busy working on a couple of peripheral projects that were certainly front and center in the school district's presentation last night with Village Farms and with formerly Shriners, now Willow Grove. We have a couple of other projects that are smaller projects that have just been completed or near completion for primarily apartments, more workforce housing. In South Davis, we have Greenhouse and we have Plaza 2555. And there's a number of other projects in the pipeline, so all of that's keeping folks pretty busy. Our new deputy police chief just started a couple of weeks ago, so he is starting to make the rounds and get out and about. His name is Matt Peterson. So hopefully, if you guys haven't met him already, you'll be introduced to him soon. We're excited to have him here. And then, last but not least, we have transitioned with Mike leaving and going to the county, so I'm serving as interim, and then we're switching around some other duties and assignments. So Parks and Community Services, both Tanika Clark and then Dan Machado will be working with the 2x2 going forward, which actually a number of years ago, Parks and Community Services was the point group or point person for this particular committee because there was so much crossover in the work that they do with the different facilities, etc. So facilities and programming both. So thank you. And they're here today to absorb. Nothing that they have to record. And the school district, so we switch back and forth with kind of admin responsibilities each school year. School district has it this year, and then as of whenever we start back up again for the next school year, whether that's August or September, it will revert to the city.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. You're welcome. Glad to have you here. So now we'll turn to our discussion items, and the first one is an update on facilities and capital improvement projects. And I'll turn to you, Superintendent.
Yeah, we've still got a lot of construction happening around the district. Our STEM building, we're closing out the STEM building. If you haven't been by, it is a phenomenal new facility at Davis Senior High. And the last really large bond-funded project is the Aquatic Center, which we are expecting to be filled with water July 1st. So it's getting close. Had a question about access to the pool. The primary entrance is north facing, right next to the north gym. So that should provide community access as opposed to the southern side, which folks would have to sort of weave through campus to get through. And this first year, our plan is to have, of course, all of our teams, take on all of our team scheduling, and likely 1 or 2 large groups. I think we'll probably be working with the city and trying to figure out who gets where to try to accommodate as many folks with the good times as opposed to where they are currently. And I think probably year 2 we'll take on lane swim and some other sorts of programming like that. See what demand looks like after we get all of our programs out of city pools. We also have 10 early learning classrooms coming online this spring to accommodate for that universal transitional kindergarten. We are also moving next year to full day kindergarten. So it's been a half-day program forever. And so we'll have full-day kindergarten. We also took over this year Davis Kids Club. So we offer before and after school care at all of our elementary sites. It's free for any students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, discounted for employees. And it's going great. We have over 500 students this year. I think we'll have even more in the years to come. And then lots of other improvements going on. We're improving the sound system at the stadium. If you have been to any of our events at Davis High Stadium, so that's getting upgraded. We just put in a new scoreboard for girls varsity softball. We've been doing some facilities improvement out there. And we've got quite a few summer deferred maintenance projects, a couple of roofs, a lot of flat work everywhere. We, like the city, have a tree plan that we are working on. We've done an assessment, so we have them all cataloged, age, height, tree variety, all that sort of stuff already, and are working on essentially a matrix like you all are. You know, which ones to assess first, and then how frequently should they be assessed, to you know, make sure we're safe and healthy and all of that stuff as well. I think that's the big stuff. Well, I think we'll talk about it. Should I talk about Anderson Corridor? Do you want me to do that, or?
I have some information on it, but I'm going to pretend to be an engineer, which should be amusing. So.
Yeah, and I'll talk about the district side. How about that?
Okay, sure.
So I think we've been in conversation with the city. We've got the same architect working on both the district and city side of the project. Our big discussion is how do we maintain the number of staff parking spots on campus so they don't have to be on the, you know, what do you call it, the bike path bifurcated. I can't, you know, anyway, so the staff don't have to be on the outside of the street or down the street to park. And in order to do that, we have to do one of two things: either remove the existing kitchen on the old NPR, they're in the front of Chavez, or put some parking kind of back where the new NPR is, off the fire lane. So that's our sort of, we need to make that design decision here relatively soon, do some joint community outreach, and I think we're close to the end in terms of design.
Good.
So.
Good.
So just to add to that, and I apologize, our public works folks weren't able to be at this meeting, so I'm improvising based on what they gave me. But the city has the right-of-way improvements, and we have our 30% striping plans that are, they've gone to our transportation commission. And those comments that came back from that commission are currently back with staff for review and edits. And then we're looking at doing outreach, and I think that's in coordination with you guys later this spring. So I think Barbara Archer is working on working with you guys on putting all that together, or will be if she hasn't reached out already. We're hoping to request the grant funds for this project next spring, and that could potentially be delayed, but it would be either next spring or summer of 27 for the actual project. So we should be knowing more about that in the next couple of months. And then, like everything else construction related, the costs have not gone down, they've increased. And the estimate right now is 5.4 million. So that's about 2.9 million for the right-of-way work, and then 2.5 million, it sounds like, for the school district property. Both sides still have shortfalls that we need to identify, about the same, about 1.1, 1.2 million on each side. I assume that that's a surprise to you, so hopefully not. So still some more work to be done, but definitely coming closer to fruition, as you said. So, the other two things that I would note, they're not specific to schools necessarily, but just high visibility and certainly involving projects that kids might be interested in. So our Central Park work here is making great progress. Actually, Dan, you can probably talk about it better than I can, but you want to give a quick update? I don't want to put you on the spot too much on the Corona and the Central Park irrigation and everything.
Oh, I mean, the splash pad is coming right along. It's actually right on schedule. I think we're still waiting for a few of the shade structures to land on site, but the overall timeline is looking really good, which is not typical for capital projects in general. We just are elated at the amount of interest, particularly with regard to our fundraising efforts that have, transpired with the project. I think we're well over $500,000 that has been raised just organically through the community. With our fundraising committee, which is totally dynamite. So we couldn't be more pleased, and it's looking like that will be done and ready to go in June, July-ish. We still have some logistical things to work out, most notably just training staff and making sure that we have all the permits from the county and so forth. But so that's looking really well. And I would just add that there's an additional project at Community Park that would be pretty relevant to youth as well, and that council actually just approved last night, which is our contract with Grindline Skate Parks. So for the non-skaters, Grindline is a very big deal, and actually they have like 300 skate parks across the United States. They're affiliated with Thrasher Magazine, and they really do produce a destination skate park. So for our youth who are into skating and actually even any wheeled sport, two-wheeled sports, roller skating, this is a really cool moment for Davis. We'll be doing a full demolition on the existing skate park and putting in a brand new Grindline skate park over the next year.
Cool. And then I just wrap up with sort of kind of mirroring what you said in terms of our urban forest and the work on trees. Last night, council approved additional funding to go to expand a pilot that we have been working on to try to assess the trees in high occupancy areas, so parks, summer camps, things like that, places where summer camps are hanging out, and to expand that to a greater number of locations so that we're doing tree assessments really on a 3-year rotating basis rather than on a 5 or 7 year. That is the first of probably more things to come in terms of us trying to really make sure that we have all of our tree program, our urban forestry program is top notch as we can make it so that we have a safe community. So.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Any questions?
Yeah, I do, if I could. So in terms of the shortfall for the Anderson Corridor project, how do we manage that? Because obviously we have 2 different governing bodies and both need to agree to address the shortfall that each of them are going to be facing. Do we have a thought on the anticipated process?
Like a technical mechanism?
Yes.
We talked that through.
Yeah, I mean,
Or
we
you probably know better
would
sense
just
of
be
that.
doing it through our budget process and, as we try to see what CIPs, what capital improvement projects need to happen in what priority order and, funding, putting additional funding toward that in that way.
Mm-hmm.
That may be part of the reason, I'm not completely certain, but that may be part of the reason that they're saying, we may need to delay. If we can't do it in 26, then we may be looking at 27. I'm not positive on that, but that would make sense to me. So, and then I don't know in terms of the school side, if there's a different process or if we need to.
We've got the funds allocated. I think you're asking is would we do like an agreement? Is that your question?
Exactly, right, because one can't go without the other, right? So that they have to be some level of contingency or MOU or something associated with it. I mean, we applied for the grant together, I understand that, and we're working together on the design side of it, but I'm just trying to understand the mechanism that ensures that we both get to the finish line at the same time.
I think the communications on this project with staff have been pretty good. So I can circle around, that would be a Ryan question for me to ask him and see if there's been any communication on that.
Okay,
And
thank
if
you.
not, then we'll get some.
And Matt, I think I asked you this before, but in terms of the full day kinder,
Yeah.
you don't get any more state money for that than you get now. That's what I
Correct.
thought.
We do get additional funds for transitional kindergarten for the additional, because they have a different staffing ratio.
Okay,
But for kindergarten, there's no additional funds.
okay.
And really, there's no facilities dollars either, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
So most
Yeah.
districts are doing this conversion on their back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did want to emphasize that. So all the building that we've done, we're fortunate to have some capital available,
Yeah.
but the state has granted us, the mandate to handle TK4 and above, but no capital funds to build the facility, yeah.
Most districts are putting the 4-year-olds in portables.
Yeah.
That's what most
That's
districts
what I
are.
figured. Wow, great. Well, thank you. So I'm just gonna, I'll note for the record, there's no member of the public here to offer comment on 5A. And then we'll move on to 5B, development updates. I'll turn to you, Matt, for development updates.
Yeah, so we continue to make progress on 526B Street. Our sort of order of operations is to find a potential home for a district office operations. In parallel, finding a new home for DSIS. They probably will not be the same location. And then the board will make a decision about what to do with 526B Street, whether it's an exchange, whether we partner with someone to develop, or whether we develop it ourselves for workforce housing. So I think those are sort of the spectrum of options we're considering. And we'll likely make a decision here in the next 6 months or so about where that's going to land.
Great, great. Any questions? I had a question. Okay. I have a question about, you mentioned possibly Davis School for Independent Studies might split off from admin and be separate. If that happens, would it be the case that the admin wouldn't need to be in a Field Act compliant building?
That's right.
Is that
Exactly.
part of the reasoning behind
Yes.
it? So you can,
Yeah, you know, the challenge with finding a building that's Field Act compliant is that you essentially have to deconstruct it to some degree
yeah,
to ensure its a compliance, which makes it economically not viable for the most part.
yeah.
So as long as there are fewer than 25 students in the building at any given time, you can have your adult operations.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. I
in a
wasn't
non-Field
sure.
Act compliant building. Yeah.
What is the word?
So
It's called the Field Act.
Field Act
Field
is
Act.
a special state law that came into play probably in the 70s. When there was, it's been in play for a long time, and it happened after an unfortunate issue where there was an earthquake and a school roof in Los Angeles County collapsed. And so after that, the legislature put in place some really strict safety standards for school facilities. As I always tell people, that's where you want to be when there's an earthquake, is in a Field Act building.
It depends on which building you're in. So, you know, so like the district office was built in 54, it's
Yeah.
Field Act compliant,
Oh.
but it's less safe than any modern office building,
Yeah.
probably. So,
Don't.
yeah, I said modern office building. So I think part of what we are exploring also is there is an exception for charter schools. There's a moratorium on non-seat-based charter schools currently, so we can't convert DSIS to be a charter like Da Vinci, even if we wanted to. That law expires in December 26th, essentially. Whether it will get renewed, you know, who knows? So that's, I think, part of our big question for DSIS, just speaking frankly, is if we continue to decline, we're gonna have plenty of space for DSIS if there's no new housing.
So they
you
would be
know,
accommodated
So
in some other.
we're gonna be closing schools and they would go somewhere else
Yeah.
in the district.
Yeah.
If development does happen and our enrollment stays around where it is currently, we'll need to construct something for them.
Okay.
So I think that decision point is, you know, near, so.
Does admin need to be in a single physical location, or could it be in different locations if there was space under campuses?
Probably one location.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you could certainly have it in different locations. I think that would be less than ideal.
Yeah.
And it's about 30,000 square feet is probably what we need.
Good.
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay, very good. Kelly, turn to you for developments.
So I touched on some of the developments that, in the announcements, but I'm going to turn my computer on here. So I want to just make note and share with you guys the housing dashboard that we have on our city's website. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
Yes.
But it is a really good tool if anybody in the community or if anybody on staff is interested in, you know, looking at what we have in the pipeline in various stages. We've got the dashboard, and then you can pull up the map and see, you know, what is in what stage of entitlement or construction or what have you. So it's a nice way to just be able to point people to look at the things that are underway. We had a number of things that have been approved, but that are awaiting their financing or trying to put their packages together to actually start construction. So 2 apartment projects with the lumberyard, which is the former Hibbert site, and then 240 G Street, which some of you may know is the former Ace
Yeah.
or the Housewares site. And then the projects I mentioned earlier, and then of course we've got our 2 larger projects that are with Village Farms and Willow Grove. So that doesn't roll off the tongue yet.
Yeah, took a while.
Which we're working with both of those to try to get them, forward to a ballot, to a future ballots. And then Palomino is also something that's been approved, and they're working through their process to get started on their construction. Bretton Woods is under construction. I don't know how much that will actually end up affecting the school district.
Yeah, we have a low expected yield.
Most of the sites over there are 55 plus, but not all of them. So there's could be some kids there, some school
I
age
think
kids. So
we're expecting 30 or something
Yeah.
total. So,
probably not a ton. But yeah, so there's a lot going on in the development arena. I think one of the things that we're watching, and we don't have any control over this, is just the national and international construction scene, and if tariffs or other restrictions or just uncertainty about the economy, if any of those things end up playing into development plans for private developers, that will be interesting to watch. And we don't have, again, we don't really have a role in it, but it is concerning because costs are up and uncertainty is up, and that's not a good combo. On the commercial side, we do have a little more certainty on what was the former U Mall and is now the Davis Collection. So you'll start seeing some stores opening there as early as late May.
Cool.
And so we're excited to have that facility back on our tax rolls, and bringing some much needed sales tax back to the city. So I don't know if there's any questions on any of that.
Just as it relates to Hibbert's one that I know pretty well. So is there any sense of being able to break the logjam on those 2 downtown projects, financing wise, or?
I don't know. I know it's a really hard market right now, and a hard atmosphere.
Yeah.
And so that one's a complicated project.
It's just hard to
as is
see
the
infill not
GC.
happening just bluntly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of a tension between the state law that says cities can't require parking if the if the development's within quarter mile transit. And so they weren't required to provide parking, but then well into the project, the first group of financiers were okay with that, but then the second group that came up and said, oh, of course not, we're not gonna finance a project with no parking.
Yeah.
So the 2 are kind of, butting heads, that idea of let's move away from parking, and the developers are saying, no, it's more appealing if we have parking. So now they're trying to reconfigure and figure out how to deal with that. So it's challenging, yeah. All right, so no other questions. I will move us on then to C, and I'll just note for the record, there's no public comment on 5B either. I'll just move us on to the DJUSD enrollment and boundary update.
yeah, really just an opportunity. You heard the presentation last night. Whether you had any follow-up questions or wonders or,
No, I heard it and nothing was surprising to me. I've been following these issues, so it's just going to be really a challenging decade ahead of us. Whatever happens, even with the approval of these projects, it's going to take time, for them to be built and for things to happen. So it's
anything?
No, I have all the information.
You got the information?
Yeah, I have the information
Yeah.
on that, enrollment and boundaries initiative, but I mean,
Yeah.
really, working to really educate our community on what it means without these projects happening. All the projects happening to help increase housing and also increase access for the people who work within our community, to be able to live here, and find housing.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. A thing we hear a lot is, I never thought about it that way. You know, I've been making these housing decisions based on traffic, you know, or the design of the project, or what my neighbor says, and I didn't know there was any impact on schools.
Or the yard
So,
sign I like
yeah,
best.
right.
Or,
So I think that, you know, is heartening to some degree. And I think that you all will probably start hearing from folks who are getting activated. So I apologize and get that ahead of time.
Yeah, no, we have lots of activated people, we like that, it's good, it's good. Last night you mentioned that one of the things all the school districts have been asked to do is look at where you could provide housing, whether it's on your surplus property or elsewhere.
Yeah.
I was curious about that. And you mentioned, I think, the particular parcel behind Harper, I think it was. And I'm just curious if schools anywhere in California have actually taken some of the unused capacity at a school site and converted it into housing, and how's that work in terms of the school day?
We actually
living?
visited one.
We
Yeah.
were in Daly
A
City.
month ago.
Yeah, so how does that work? What's it look
So
like?
we visited 2 places in Daly City who, they have an elementary school district, a high school district. So the elementary district essentially split an elementary school campus that was quite a bit larger than most of ours, I would say. So basically they took half, they made a perimeter fence, and they built a 52-unit, essentially condo complex for employees. And they gave preferences to teachers with, credential types they needed the most, but then had about half, a little more than half was classified staff.
That's right.
The high school district built 120-unit, but it looks more like an apartment complex, really nice, at a closed, Serramonte High School closed in Daly City, so they built it right next to where the old buildings were, and then they have a plan for 2 phases of private development, housing development on the remaining portion of the campus. But it was, 25 million or something, 30 million. And this is, I think, their 3rd year of having employees housed. But it was nice.
And they have 100+ employees out of 500 in the district, so nearly 20% of their employees live in this development.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and it's a really well done development.
And if the district finances it, and you don't have any property costs, you don't pay property tax.
Yeah.
They're offering rent at 50 to 60% of market. So significant savings for employees on housing costs.
So interesting. So in these cases, you described the new construction on existing school sites,
Yes.
I'm curious too about like whether unused building capacity on an existing site could be converted into housing.
So we've really looked at all of our sites. The main properties we have that I think are suitable for anything greater than 1 unit is going to be Harbor, Nugget Field, and Emerson. Some of the land because there's quite a bit of unused land at Emerson.
And of course, B Street.
And then B Street. Yeah. So I think those are the places where we could imagine some, more than 1 unit of development.
Yeah, nice. And then
we also are exploring, do we look at purchasing existing housing? Whether it's new or used, whether it's apartments or single family homes or condos, we want that to be part of the equation. I think part of our board's interest is to have net new housing. If we're going to do something, we'd like it to be net new to the city, but I think we're, looking at all of our options.
Okay, great. How did Daly City, you said they financed the new construction, did they issue
They used
bonds?
a COP, Daly City did, I think both did COPs, right?
Yeah, one had some existing funds though.
Yeah.
They stacked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've been through several seminars, and we have more coming up on financing options. You may know San Diego, Measure U from 2 years ago, they took a $500 million plus or minus bond measure and allocated about 175 million of it for housing, for workforce housing. So some districts are looking at doing specific bonds. It's in a lot of use for bond funds.
LA Unified did some capital A affordable housing, so they used, federal and state funds to do that.
So are they doing it with regular geos or Prop 39 bonds?
It was a regular deal.
Regular geos.
Yeah, it was part of a compendium of different uses for the capital.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I think the capital side of it is probably the one that we don't have. I think the rest of it, we're starting to begin to feel. Maria led a really compelling survey of staff last year, where we got an understanding of what percentage of our staff are interested, what kind of housing they would want, because some early in their career are looking for apartments, some a little bit later in their career might have families, might be looking for something that looks a little bit more like a traditional home. I don't know if you want to take a moment and talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of saw the spectrum of interest both from our certificated staff and our classified staff, but I think what we really were surprised about was how much interest there was in the idea of workforce housing. I think 77% of the people who took the survey, and we had about half of our staff take the survey, said that they would have some interest in either a DJOSD provider owned rental or provided options for sale. So yeah, it was a eye opener, I think, for us.
Yeah,
And we have a website with all the information about the survey itself and other things that have been going on.
Good, thank you. I did have a question that's a little bit, I think it's tied to the idea of enrollment and boundary update, but it's more about the current state of things. I know each of our elementary schools was built on that small neighborhood school model, and each one, they have slightly different capacities. They vary a little bit. Which schools are the most undersubscribed right now, or what's the balance look like across those elementary schools?
So all of our elementary schools have a maximum capacity between 500 and 600. There's been a couple who have been over 600 just a little bit, and it was very full. Chavez and Birch, and we're in the 620s for a couple of years, about 7 or 8 years ago, and they're all below 600 now. I would say the schools that are struggling the most with enrollment are Pelham. Is at about 380 students right now. Birch Lane is coming along right behind. And Montgomery, I think, are 3 that are struggling the most with enrollment. I think Korematsu is this coming year will see a pretty significant decline in the number of kinders. And so that just sort of is like the signal that it starts to roll forward. Korematsu had 3 kindergartners 2 years ago, 3 kindergarten cohorts 2 years ago, had 1 2.5 last year, 2 next year. Birch Lane has 1 neighborhood kinder and a K1 combo. In the neighborhood program, they had 8 Montessori kinder applications. They usually have 3 K1 Montessoris, so what ends up happening when we're undersubscribed at this point is that's where all the inters go. All the non-resident students that enroll between now and the first of school, they get sort of funneled to those places to fill out those remaining seats. But it's once you step down a cohort, that's the signal that things are changing.
Publin is the one that though has been I just hate to use the analogy, but the canary in the coal mine. There's been no development west of 113 since we moved here in 2002. And, those people moved in, they had kids, the kids are now graduating and they're staying, and there's no new development.
And Publin and Birch, for example, of the kinder cohorts that are there, about half of them are non-resident students. So, you have 35 kindergartners, and 16 or 17 of them don't live in Davis. So that we're really seeing that the neighborhood cohort is just really small.
I can believe that. I see that at Korematsu too, because you have that same pattern where you had the development and wild horse and everything, and everyone came in with the young kids, and now they're all gone.
And I think part of what is concerning to our board in regards to the fiscal solvency component is, as the economy turns, we're highly susceptible to drops in capital gains and sales tax. And when that drops in California, it's a direct line to a reduction in either, no COLA or negative COLA. And we're on that trend line now. And so when that starts to happen and you're declining enrollment, the amount of time you have to make big decisions like this just gets squeezed, because you can't subsidize that additional 10 or 15 open seats at a school site. So you either put it down to one cohort, which then, you know, you've got sort of the exodus reality, right? People are like, you can't run a school like this, you know, so I think we're hanging on that edge right now at both Putwin and Birch. And if the economy turns too far in the next 18 to 24 months, it's going to make hard decision time come a little sooner and with a little more, you know, a little more zeal. So, yeah.
Okay, on that happy note,
I have a question for community parks. So, I mean, we're talking about the school and like the decrease and all that, but how is it impacting the programs that have been so robust over the years, especially in the summertime?
Yeah, I was actually going to add that this general trend was picked up on in our community needs assessment, which we just did, and was forecasted for us to really be thinking about active adult programming, enhancing in that because of the trend line with youth enrollment over time locally. But that's actually more of an even national trend too. I mean, just in terms of our birth rate and aging population living longer, et cetera. I think in terms of enrollment, because our ceiling is, you know, of course, much lower than what you're dealing with at each and every school site. I mean, we're doing okay, but we have noticed, I think, overall some enrollment decreases in some programs. Our flagship programs are fine, and they're doing just fine, and we still have wait lists and all of that. But in some of our other things, we have noticed some decline and just the general demographic shift. Would you say that accurately? I would say captures that.
Yeah, and I can jump in on that too. In our outreach to various community groups to get on their schedule to talk, they're feeling like youth soccer is feeling it, youth baseball, you know, they're seeing less kids. It's real to them. So
Is there like I gotta figure out how to say this.
That just means it's gonna be good. Go ahead.
Yep, camera's rolling.
I just wanna know, like, I've been in this community since 2000, so that's, you know, good 25 years, and when we first moved in, it was very much a marketing of young families and families with children. I'm just curious now, you know, is that marketing of who we are as a community geared more towards that great place to live as you age, you know, a great place to be, because it is a great place to age as well, because we have so much to offer. How is that being balanced in some way?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I have to give it some thought to try to answer, because I don't know that we've marketed or that we have a message to just one group. We have students meaning the university students.
Yeah, and I was separating those out from.
And then, you know, we certainly do have a number of the population who are older, but I'm not sure that we market to like the older demographic specifically. So.
Yeah, and I think where I've seen the marketing to the older demographic is more tied to housing that's tailored for older folks. Like URC has this very strong marketing program, and they completely tout all the advantages of being here in Davis if you're aging, you know, and talk about that. But to your point too, like you came here 25 years ago, and that's roughly around the time we bought our house. And when we came, and I don't know if it was you who mentioned this last night or whoever it was, but there must have been 200 homes on the market then.
Yeah.
And all of the real estate agents, everyone we worked with was like, oh, you've chosen second. We already knew Davis because I'd gone to law school here, but everyone was like, oh, you're going to love it here. It's a great place for kids, da-da-da-da-da. That was their whole mantra, was how wonderful a place it is to raise kids. But there were homes to buy. And that's what isn't happening now. Now there's 10 homes on the market instead of 100 or 200. I think really it's the real estate community that does a lot of that marketing about why Davis is great. That's of course why they were here last night as well, because they want more homes to sell. So, yeah.
I mean, I think we sleuth around on Reddit quite a bit and read what folks have to say. And I've seen a number of posts more recently, in fact, talking about families who want to move here and talking specifically about the bike paths, the green belt infrastructure, the parks, and et cetera. And we, of course, latch on to that kind of stuff and try to do what we can with our marketing. So I know that that is the dialogue that does happen. I think it's just the affordability component for young families.
Well, it's the school district, it's the attractiveness of.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, yes.
That's why,
Schools.
certain families want to be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But your question also made me think about the farmer's market and how, that's such a gathering place. It's for all the families when they come here. Everyone goes there. And when you go there now, you realize there's a lot of people coming in from other cities.
Yeah.
They come to the farmer's market. It's like a destination. And some of them are coming from West Sac because they just love the Davis Farmers Market. It'd be really interesting to kind of hear more from them. Like, well, what would it, are you interested in living here? And I'm sure the answer is universally, we'd love to live here. We can't afford the houses here. We got a nicer house for less money.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to know of all those folks who are coming on Saturday, where are you coming from? And, what housing choices did you have to make? It'd be interesting. So I think I have my own anecdotal kind of sense of that. But yeah, it's interesting. So our next item is workforce housing. We kind of touched on that.
Yeah, we kind of touched on it.
We did touch on that already.
Yeah.
So, are there any other announcements, comments? So thank you. I look forward to more updates. As you know, I follow education issues, and it's such a rough year at the state.
Oh, I forgot to mention in my original comments too, that we've been getting a lot of questions about what's going on with the federal executive orders and funding threats and blackmail might be the right word.
Oh my gosh.
So our guidance from the state currently is stay the course. Our state laws currently exist. I think there's we're insulated to some degree buffered by the state of California and the Department of Education.
Yeah.
But I think our commitment is to welcoming and belonging schools and making sure that students feel safe and welcome and that they have the programs they need to thrive. And I think we're sort of preparing ourselves to cross the bridges we need to cross if we need to cross them.
Yeah.
But for most the K-12 public school system, it's a sort of wait and see at the moment.
Yeah.
We haven't had any indications about potential loss of funding, or we definitely are feeling the effects of the Department of Education getting sort of parsed out and responsiveness for programming. But we have the funds for this current year. What distribution will look like next year, who knows?
But it's apparently we're not going to rely on any data. Apparently, that's the one of the latest. Data is not important anymore. So sorry, revealing my.
I would think I add just one thing. I think the board reaffirmed our commitment to the principles of one community, which I know the city is committed to, as well as our We All Belong resolution. We have consistently made statements about that at every single meeting, and it is important because we know from our conversations, which I suspect you do as well, community members, there's real fear, and even to the point of, am I okay dropping my child off, and all of that, all those kinds of things. And so I think the fact that we as a community are staying together is really, really, really important.
Yeah.
And then personally on the funding side, the one that I think we're at biggest risk of is the federal food program. We made a shift in California and Davis. We're committed to everybody has access to meals. We're not gonna play any games around how can you possibly learn if you're hungry, right? And that's been a commitment. And if that funding changes, which I think there's a real significant chance that it will, that's going to have a material impact on us.
I had not heard this.
Disabilities and how that's going to be run and how that's going to be shifted, and
But we get a little money for that now.
Which is that?
We have three major programs that the feds fund. One is student nutrition. It's the reimbursement for meals.
Right.
IDEA funding
Yeah.
to support students with disabilities, and then the title, what we call title funds.
Yeah, Yeah.
The lowest amount of funding we get is from the title fundings, then special ed, and then
yeah,
food services.
yeah. But and I won't get into,
No.
I know, yeah.
We'll get out of that.
I
It'll not be
could,
pretty.
yes, I'll stop there. So thank you, everyone. So I will adjourn the meeting, and our next meeting is May 21.